Okay, awesome. I am thrilled to see what do we got? 43 people now on the call. That is super exciting. Before I get into the content, I will say what I tend to say when I'm with you guys. Alan is doing crazy stuff. You guys are meeting the needs of your families in a unique way, and I'm always impressed by the structure of how Allen ISD reaches out to their families. But for the families on the call, none of that works if you don't show up to stuff. None of that works if you're not engaged. And the commitment level from the parents has been mind-blowing for me. I'm in a lot of schools and in a lot of school districts in a lot of different places. The turnout at Allen ISD is always higher than other schools that I'm in, and that is a testament both to what Allen ISD is doing, but also to you, the parents of Allen, and your commitment to your kids. So I commend you for that. I'm glad you're here. My hope is that this morning will be, or this afternoon will be definitely worth your time being here. I'm going to go ahead and pause for a second, and I'm going to get to my slides. Here's what I want to make sure you know, though, as I'm doing that. And Ashley or Christy, if one of you can holler at me if the screen is switched, but you should be seeing my slides. We good? Okay. All right. So for those of you on a mobile device, if you will go to the chat section of this call, you will find a hyperlink. Scroll down to the bottom of that page, and you'll see this little logo. There's a PDF with all the slides you're about to see. So you do not have to worry about taking notes. You don't have to screenshot. If you want to screenshot, by all means, but you don't have to do that. You can scroll down to the chat. You also can follow the QR code. If you're on a laptop and want to pull this up on your phone or on a secondary device, you can do that. Paravita is the name of my company, and what I do within that company is what we're doing now. So we offer two different levels of support. One is we offer individualized support, so we do standard mental health, but we do a lot of this. We go into schools, we go into civic organizations, and our goal is to try and ensure that you are equipped to raise parents in a really crazy time to raise kids. I think I said raise parents. That's for your kids. For you, we want to help you raise kids in this moment that is kind of overwhelming for us as parents. As I always say, let me go ahead and get to this part. As I always say before we get into this, I do these trainings because I'm passionate about what we're about to talk about, but I primarily do them because I'm the father of two kids. I've got a 13-year-old and a 9-year-old who are just as in the world as your kids are, and they're experiencing the same types of things that your kids are experiencing. So we're in this together, and I mean that from the core of my being. We're in this together. The second thing about what you see in front, this is my bio is what's in front of you, and because we're on devices, I don't have to read it to you. The main thing I want you to hear is, yes, my clinical experience is I'm a licensed, all the things you see, marriage and family therapist, professional counselor. I got a doctorate and all this stuff. So that's fine. The thing that I want you to hear, though, is I worked in public education for a long time. I worked in Mesquite ISD for 12 years. I am passionate about the purpose and calling that public education has to our families. I also kind of know what that world looks and sounds like. And I have tried to both educate in that world. I've tried to work in technology in that world, and I've tried to do some therapeutic stuff in that world. So I hope that what you hear this morning, I hope you don't hear it as a guy on the outside who's just telling you what I think you should do. This is a lot of firsthand experience. Okay, last thing, just for this conversation. This is what we're about to do is my wheelhouse. Okay, technology and kids, and specifically social media and video gaming and kids, and also pornography, which we're going to touch on a little tiny bit. But those things are my passion area. They are what I spent the overwhelming majority of my graduate school life researching. In fact, the subject of my dissertation was the impact of social media on analog relationships. That was a 300-page study. You are welcome to read it. If you can make it through without taking a nap or two, I'm going to be shocked. My wife nor my kids have been able to pull that off. But I did write a really long paper about this. What you're about to get, some of it is rooted in that research. A lot of it is going to be rooted in some newer stuff that's come out. But when we talk about this, when we talk about the impact of technology and social media on kids, I need you to hear. There's a lot of stuff that I try to know what I'm talking about. This one, I've spent most of my career researching. So I promise what you're going to get will be accurate and valid. I hope you'll find it to be user friendly. My last comment is I never leave you with just theory. I always leave you with practice. So you're going to get some hands-on stuff. In fact, I'm going to give you a tool towards the end of this presentation that I hope will revolutionize the way you work with your families. All right. I used to save this slide until the end, but everybody would start asking questions ahead of time. So if you want to read a book about this topic, these three are all really, really good. Stolen Focus is more for you as parents. I wouldn't recommend you read that with your kids. Anxious Generation, there's going to be some stuff in that book that your kids you'll want to talk about with your kids. One of them that always makes me laugh, and this will be a great jumping off point for you to talk to your kids. One of them is he goes through in the Anxious Generation an analysis of playground construction from the era that we all grew up in and the era that our kids are growing up in. And it's kind of hilarious. My kids saw a picture of a playground in that book. And on the playground, there was monkey bars that were 10 feet off the ground with nothing underneath it except dirt. And that was my elementary school playground. And so my kids were both shocked that like we were just turned loose on these things. So it prompted an interesting conversation. Anxious Generation, if you don't read the other ones, I cannot recommend that book more strongly. I would imagine you've probably heard that book recommended in various settings. I strongly recommend it. If you are like me, you are a linear kind of type A person and you want to know, okay, theory is great, but what do I do? Digital Minimalism is a great read for you. If you are a tab A into slot B kind of person, Digital Minimalism is your book. All right. So with that said, I want to get into the content. One last thing I forgot to mention. If you have a question, throw it in the chat. I'll probably get to those near the end. I can't promise I'll address everything. I have a lot of ground I want to cover, but if you have a question, I'll do my best to try to address it. Throw it in the chat. All right, so let's get into the topic. I always start my presentation on technology with this question. Now, I'm not going to get any feedback from you because I don't want to try to manage the digital nature of this dialogue, but I always start with this question. When you were a kid, what did you most enjoy doing? All right, I asked this question at Green Elementary just like a month ago, okay? And I talked to their parents, and we had a 15, 20-minute dialogue about this. Their answers were exactly what I thought their answers would be. Their answers were staying outside until the floodlights came on. The answers were climbing trees and building forts and riding bikes through the neighborhood and feeling big because you had this element of freedom. All right. So the reason that I asked this question is because when we really get into technology and what it is, that's the stuff that's getting taken away. Okay, it's the types of things that you and I most enjoyed in our young life. We enjoyed this kind of analog freedom. We enjoyed being able to, we knew when people were home, not because we saw their icon or their avatar in an app. We knew they were home because we rode our bike past their house and saw that their bike was still there. And so because it was, we could stop and see that they were home. There was this, and I try my best not to sound like just an angry old man as I go through this presentation, because I do realize that that's not really the world that most of our kids grow up in. But my question is, why? Why not? They've got the rest of their lives to be tethered to devices. So while they're little, man, we need to be conscious of the fact that our technology it's not just about what's coming into their eyes. So when we talk about social media or we talk about like digital infiltration, most of your concern is what bad things are they seeing? Your concern is how do I protect them from bullying or from porn or from, I want to, before we even get to that, that's not my biggest concern. That's a concern, but it's not my biggest concern. My biggest concern is how many kids log in and then when they log off, they miss their childhood. They missed that era of time. Guys, I long for a life where I, as an adult, can go out and play. And it's not really the way we live anymore. And so I want you to hear that my biggest concern for your kids is not what they're seeing, it's what they're missing. And that's where we get to some of the studies that demonstrate that my fear is well founded. So this is a graph. I'm going to explain it to you so you don't have to read through it. This is a graph that essentially tracks the social outings of high school kids. Okay, and it starts with eighth grade, but secondary kids. The social outings mean the number of times that kids existed out in the real world with other peers. Okay, so the times that they would meet up, the times that they would go to a friend's house, they'd go to a restaurant, they'd go to a movie, some of those things that you guys probably remember fondly from your childhood. And what you can see, if you can't read that graph, down is bad. And you'll notice that it's going down. And for the record, it's been going down since the 70s, okay? But it was fairly stable until 2010. In 2010, social engagement in children fell off a cliff. Now, it's not, I'm not telling you that around 2010, I'm telling you in 2010, everything changed. Why? You look through anxiety diagnoses, you look through depressive diagnoses, you look through medication for those two disorders in children, you look at ADHD diagnoses, all of it. There was this colossal shift that happened in 2010. So why 2010? 2010 is when social media and smartphones had a demon baby that created the ability for social media to follow kids around in their pockets. For those of us who were adults in that time period, as I was, we didn't know what we were doing. We just thought it was neat. We didn't know that social media being on a kid's device and kids getting a device when they were really young, we didn't know that that could potentially be a negative thing. So it's all started in 2010. But here's the ultimate reality of what happened. Kids learn not through our teaching. Now, don't get me wrong, our teaching is valuable. You should continue to try and give your kids strong, powerful messages. But I want you to know your kids are going to learn by doing. All right. So let me tell you a lesson. And this next slide is meant to demonstrate a particular lesson. It is estimated, depending on the study you're looking at, and you'll see some of this in the anxious generation, it is estimated that the average 18-year-old in 2024, so this data is from last year, the average 18-year-old in 2024 had somewhere between 20 and 30,000 fewer face-to-face interactions than in any previous generation. Okay, now I need to explain why that's important. If you're on this call, that means you're an adult, and I'm going to guess if you had decided at 16 that you wanted to spend 2 months without interacting with another human being, you would have literally died. You couldn't have made it. You could not have existed in that way. A 16-year-old now not only could easily survive, could thrive, and would probably love it. Now we do things like order food and groceries and peek out the window to wait until they've left it on the doorstep. We're not even going to talk to the person bringing us our food. DoorDash is one of the weirdest inventions in human history. Think about like takeout and pizza. Like there was this level of food that was acceptable to have delivered. Now it's here's $5, you go get my McDonald's. That's a weird business model, right? So then they come to our house and they knock on our door, and even the era of being friendly with your delivery person has kind of ended. Instead, like I said, like a culture of stalkers, we peer out the window waiting for them to leave so that we can then go get our food. We're losing humanity. All right, now let me tell you why that's a big problem for your kids. Okay. 20 to 30,000 fewer face-to-face interactions. Parents, I need you to hear why that's a problem, okay? So I want, pause for a second, take a breath. Let me tell you what's happening to your kids. They have 20 to 30,000 fewer opportunities to say something embarrassing in front of a group of friends in 4th or 5th grade and have to navigate it. 20 to 30,000 fewer opportunities to tell a dumb joke that nobody gets and then to have to reword it for the next time. 20 to 30,000 fewer opportunities to say something that they don't realize is insulting, that insults another person, and they have to watch that person's face and then figure out how to make up for it, how to navigate that social awkwardness. Parents, That's how your kids develop empathy. That's how they develop social connection. That's how they develop the ability to be decent and kind human beings, by existing in the real world and messing up over and over. You take 20,000 of those opportunities away from kids, you can see why a 20-year-old has an awkward conversation with a peer and wants to go hide under their bed for the next 3 weeks. Okay, they want to do that because they don't have the experience of having messed this up before. Look, I got really good at talking to people by being really clumsy at talking to people. You were the same way. All right, so here's what I need you to do. Parents, you are the first generation of parents in history that have to consciously ask your kids to engage with the real world. So I want you to do a couple things for me. Number one, make them go out and play with their friends. Number two, and this is a big one, if you are with your children, and if you've been in any of my presentations this year, this is advice you've already heard. If you are in any situation with where your kids have the opportunity to socialize with an adult, ask them to do it. They need to order their own food in restaurants. They need to be the ones who do the checkout at the grocery store if possible. You need to create opportunities. Your kid at Starbucks should be able to order their own drink. Okay, however old they are, work them through how to engage with another person. All right, so let me get into the stuff that's really specific to social media, okay? These are the effects that we understand now. These are things we didn't know in 2010, 2012, 2015, when we were kind of in the wild west of social media. Here's what we know now. We know that, number one, there has been a sharp increase in anxiety, depression, and self-harm in kids that, again, started in 2010. This was largely due to that widespread adoption of social media. Now, here's where this becomes a real big issue for your kids. It wasn't just social media as a whole. It was these image-heavy apps, Instagram, Snapchat, and these types of apps create this hyper emphasis on other people's reactions to me. They create a hyper emphasis on the way that I look and what I'm presenting. So that creates this anxiety, this anxious state. It also creates this really weird phenomenon that I don't think any of us could have predicted. It's a performative phenomenon. We had in this era post-image heavy stuff, we found that kids felt, even when they weren't online, they felt like they were still online. In other words, even in one-on-one, face-to-face interactions with other peers and with adults, they reacted as though people were still watching them, which was a really, really weird reality for us. We also found, I'm going to get into the gender differences here in just a second, but we also found that boys reacted to social media differently than girls. And that often resulted in them not necessarily diving into the image-heavy apps. They were diving into gaming and pornography, which had a terrible, terrible effect on their ability to socialize, but it was different than what we saw in girls. All right, so a couple other things that we found. We also found that the design of social media, so what social media is, promotes addiction. Now, we don't have the longitudinal studies for this yet because this is all fairly new, but I'm predicting, and I think I'm fairly safe in saying this, I'm predicting that we're going to have an increase in addictive behaviors in a group of kids who were raised online. Okay, now why do I say that? I say that because if you read the slide, you'll see that social media's algorithms are designed to use a dopamine-driven feedback loop, and that is what addiction at its core is. So what are we doing? We're creating little addicts starting at 10, 11, 12 years old. We're kind of conditioning this dopaminergic experience where their life is driven by this biochemical feedback loop that makes them want more of the things that they like. You don't have to have a PhD in marriage and family therapy to know that that's not setting a kid up for success. All right. You also know that the digital world has created this loss of resilience and this rise of fragility in young kids. When I say fragility, I want to explain what I mean. I mean that the ability to live life on social media, the ability to live life in this technology-heavy world has made it to where kids can rely on that and can hide in that, which prevents them from having to actually develop independence and coping skills. That kids don't have to deal with their problems online. They really don't. They can change the app they're using. They can shut down conversations they don't like. They don't ever have to hear a diverse viewpoint. They can just kind of live in a silo, and that's not good. Kids should not be growing up in a world where they're siloed from the outside world. What it does is it creates this really hyper fragile state of existence, and we don't want the goal in kids is developing resilience. It's not to create forever fragile. All right. We also saw this is a slide I wanted to touch on a little bit. Um, we see differences in the way boys and girls reacted to social media. So girls tended to experience more mental and emotional harm from social media. The reason for that is because the world that they live in has more of an emphasis on things like social comparison and relational aggression, whereas boys tended to be overwhelmed by it. And I'll give you an example of what I mean. The first group text that my 13-year-old son ever found himself on, um, there was a morning where he woke up and there was something like 400 unread text messages. And his reaction to that was to disengage. In fact, he ended up eventually, we ended up leaving the chat because his reaction to this was just it was just completely overwhelming. That prompted him to not want to engage in that type of dialogue. Well, he's 13. I imagine it'll come back. Um, his friends who are girls, and he's got a number of them, didn't have that reaction. They felt this compulsion to need to get back on and engage with a lot of what they had missed. Now, we're stereotyping a bit. I know it's not going to be true for every kid, but the data says what the data says. Technically, I guess the data say what the data say. But there is a difference in the way that boys and girls react to this. The other issue, and this is we've already touched on this a little bit. The decline of in-person socialization is absolutely devastating for kids. So we've got to work hard. Parents, I need you to not be afraid to draw hard boundaries when it comes to your kids. I just opened the chat and it looks like somebody posted a link to the Wait Till 8, which is a fairly modern movement, which is a commitment to waiting until eighth grade to give your kid a smartphone. I want to pause. It's a great idea for the record. If you are into that, by all means, do it. Something I want you to hear. There's one reason that parents are giving kids cell phones at young ages. One primary reason. Well, that's not true. There's two primary reasons. Let me get to the first one. The first primary reason is one that sounds crazy, but it's what a lot of you tell me. It's because their friends do. That sounds so bad for us as parents, but ultimately we don't want our kid to be the only one who doesn't have a phone. So they come home and say, "Well, my friends all have phones, and they're all on a text thread, and they're all." And the interesting thing is that logic didn't work for your parents. When you said that to your parents, it didn't work. But man, it works on us. Our kid telling us I'm going to be left out, we will bend our commitments. We will do unhealthy things if it means our kids won't be left out. Parents, I want to encourage you to not be swayed by that logic. If your kids' friends are all engaging in an unhealthy behavior, I need you to be willing to engage in a healthy behavior, even in spite of that. One of the comments that I will make to my kids, and I clarify it, I don't let it stay, but I do react to do it this way. When my kids have said to me, "Well, my friends are all allowed to do this," my response is always, "Well, I guess I just love you more than your friends' parents love their kids." Now, obviously, I say that tongue in cheek, and I do, of course, support my friends' parent or my kids' friends' parents. But it's the reality. You're not going to sway me by telling me that other people's parents don't set the same boundaries that I do. All right, so I want you to be aware of that. The second reason that we tend to give is we want to stay connected to them. That I need to know where they are. I need to be able to text them or to call them, or when practice is over, they need to. I'll get to that. There are ways you can do that don't involve your kid having access to social media. I will tell you, my child has the ability. My 13-year-old, not my 9-year-old, my 13-year-old has he has a phone. He has an iPhone, but he does not have social media profiles, social media apps. He has the ability to text me. We'll get to some safeguards we put in place too. All right. So ultimately, here's a wrap. AI generated image that I think encapsulates the experience of a lot of young kids. We're missing the analog world and we're replacing it with this digital existence, which is just unhealthy. All right, so let me start in early childhood now. I'm going to move pretty quickly through these next slides because I want to spend the last at least 25 minutes talking about what we can do. But let me get to this one first. Really early in their lives, there's some really damaging things that starts to happen. So I wanted to point to this. For every hour per day that a preschool age kid, so this is prior to age 5, for every hour per day that a preschool age kid engages in digital stimulation, and that is anything screen related. So iPads, iPhones, gaming. As much as I hate it, Bluey does count. That counts as digital stimulation because that is a screen. I love Bluey, by the way, but it does count for what we're about to look at. For every hour per day that a kid engages in that type of stimulation, it's correlated to a 10% increase in the likelihood that somebody like me is eventually going to diagnose that kid with some sort of a hyperactive attention disorder. Okay, so we're talking about, a kid engages in 3-4 hours a day. 4 hours a day means we've increased the likelihood by 40% that kid is going to be diagnosed with an attention disorder. But now here's the flip side of that coin. That's not all bad news. Here's the flip side of that coin. The flip side of that coin is that for cognitive stimulation, so for the ability cognitive stimulation is Lego. Cognitive stimulation is playing out in the yard. It's literally anything that doesn't involve an electronic device. For every hour per day that a kid engages in cognitive stimulation, that is correlated to a 30% decrease in that same likelihood. Okay, so what are we trying to say? What we're trying to say is that kids are going to be in front of screens. I need you to hear me because it helps you understand that I'm not quite as militant about technology as you might expect. My kids they have an iPad, they have a PlayStation and an Xbox, and they watch movies and they do all the same stuff that your kids do. My kids are not, we don't live in some like digital black hole. We're not digitally Amish, where we refuse to engage in the digital world. We just understand that cognitive stimulation, in other words, playing outside, is a more important part of their life than their digital life. I'm going to help you balance that here in just a minute. All right, I want to explain, though, why that is. Okay, so here's why those things exist. The reason those numbers are what they are is because if you can imagine from 0 to 5, if you could imagine giving your kid total control of their input. All right, so what do I mean? I mean, if your kid finds a musical artist that he likes, with 2 clicks, you can download that artist's entire music catalog. You don't have to work for anything. When your kid has a movie they want to watch, they can just download it. They can find a streaming service. They can rent it. There's a way they can get access to that movie. When you and I were growing up, and this is where I'm going to make us sound like old people, none of that was possible. When you and I were growing up, how did we get our music? We went to Hastings or to Sam Goody or to Tower Records. How did we watch movies? We waited until they came out. We called a phone number or we looked in a newspaper and we went and paid money to watch the movie. Or we had HBO and waited till it came on and we tried to figure out the nuclear device that was our VCR. If we wanted to watch on Saturday morning, if we wanted to watch cartoons, we had to physically be in front of the TV at 9 o'clock when that cartoon came on. I had to be in front of the TV at noon when Saved by the Bell was going to come on. I had to be in front of the TV on Friday night for TGIF when Full House and when Boy Meets World, when those shows were going to come on, because that's when they aired. Your kids don't have to bend their will that way. Your kids have total control over all of the things that I just mentioned. All right, so from 0 to 5, we give kids devices that give them total control over their input. And then at 5 years old, we put them in a kindergarten classroom. And in that kindergarten classroom, the teacher gives them an assignment that they don't want to do. For 5 years, that kid has been swiping off of anything they don't like. Now they can't do that, and they don't know how to handle it. And because they don't know how to handle it, they can't swipe off their teacher. And so they have these behaviors that make them look like they can't adjust, that make them look like they can't tolerate change, or that they have some sort of defiant issue. No, they're just used to being in control, and we took it away. All right. So I put this slide is one of my favorites because everything I just said is on the slide: Looney Tunes and an old school movie theater, and then a CD store. And if you were like me, you always went to the used section first, because I may have only walked in with $12 and a new CD was going to be $14.99. All right, so here's what the digital world taught you. Here's the pre-digital world. The pre-digital world taught you the world doesn't revolve around you. You got to make things work. You have to pay for everything, which means money and time and energy. And if you miss it, it's on you. Okay, all of these things were lessons that you and I got from the world around us. Your kids get a completely different message. Here's the message that the digital world teaches your young children. The world is on demand, and it's up to you to get what you want. Acquiring entertainment and knowledge and information is effortless. If you don't like something, just switch to something better. You don't ever have to miss anything. You don't ever have to worry about that. If you encounter something that you don't like, including people and viewpoints, you can just move on to something else. That's what the digital world is telling our kids. And then they struggle to engage in the real world, and we think the problem is the kid. Come on, man. Parents, the problem is we've raised them in a digital world to not have to confront the realities of the analog world that they're going to exist in. All right, so here's my last. I'm going to get to solutions. But before I get to solutions, I need you to see. I think this was an AI generated image. I think my prompt was generate an image of two parents who look both shocked and offended at the same time. And that's what it came up with. Here's what I need you to hear, parents. The problem isn't really your kids. The problem is us. We have our own issues with technology. We're as glued to our screens as they are. The difference is nobody's barking at us about it. Okay, so here's the best way I can frame it. This next slide is meant to frame it that way. You want to ask for healthy kids, but your pantry is stocked full of nothing but donuts. Look, if we want to fix this problem, which I want to fix this problem, if we're going to fix this problem, parents, I need you to hear me. Here's where it starts. It starts with you as parents getting a handle on your own technology first. If you are somebody who really wants to revolutionize your technology experience, this is my one shameless plug. We do that at our company all the time. We work with families who want to digitally detox. We help craft programs for them to do that, and we will help you do that. I'll give you a rough estimate, a rough outline of what it looks like. I'll do that towards the end, but we can help you do that. The goal is a dopamine reset. The goal is to get your own house in order, your own individual house in order. And then once you've done that, then you're way more prepared to help your kid navigate through some of these really, really complex issues. All right, so we're going to start with you, but here's my big message to parents. There's a whole neuroscience section that I cut out of this presentation just recently, and I did that mainly because I wanted to leave room for some dialogue at the end. But here's my big message to you as parents. There is a biologically real application of the phrase I'm about to tell you. Your phone makes you less happy with anything that isn't your phone. That's the way it's designed. And when I say less happy, I don't mean it's offering more value. I mean that when we measure like chemical reactions, like the effect of dopamine and serotonin on the brain, the real world just flat can't keep up with your phone. And look, I'll use my own family because I don't want you to feel like I'm talking bad about yours. My kids are not as interesting as my phone. My phone can tell me anything I want to know. Earlier today, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, and I asked an AI model for a list of famous people from Kansas. Well, it gave me a massive list. It actually fit the conversation we were having. My kids can't do that. My kids just want to talk about things that they're interested in. You know what I mean? They just want to talk about jokes that they think are funny. They don't want to tell me the deepest, most profound secrets of the universe, but I can get that from my phone. Okay, do you understand what I'm saying? I love my kids more than anything in the world. My phone, I would never look at my phone again if I had to in order to benefit the life of my children. But If you're just talking about which one holds my attention more, yeah, it's my phone. And the same's true for you. All right. So I need you to hear that your kids, your family members, your loved one, your significant other, your partner, your husband, your wife, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, all of those people, they're all competing with something that they can't compete with. All right, so I need you to hear that. The second thing I need you to hear is you can't create a tech obsessed culture in your home and then blame your kids for having a tech obsession. Parents, if your phone is out at dinner, you can't say anything about your kid's phone being out. If you respond every time your phone makes a noise, you can't expect your kids to not do the same. If you are going to be tethered to your device, it's real hard to give your kid that message, but tell them not to be tethered to their device. All right. So I guess the way to say that is you can't expect an unhealthy home to produce healthy kids. If my pantry is full of nothing but donuts, I can't expect for my kids to be healthy. All right. So what do we do? Here's the how do we fix this section? This is the part I want to see how many people we still have in here. 59. Okay, I'm really glad we didn't lose anybody. So the first half of this presentation was I get it, maybe a little scary, hopefully a little bit convicting. I use big words not because I want to make you feel bad, but because I need your attention. And I know that most of you are probably watching this presentation while doing something else. And I hope when I just told you that your kids aren't as interesting as your phone, I hope it got your attention, because what I want to do is I want to show you how to fix it. All right, here's how we're going to facilitate. Here's what we're going to facilitate. One, we're going to facilitate more intentional family development. Okay, I'm going to get to that in just a second, but I need you to know we're going to facilitate more of that. Second, we're going to facilitate more time outdoors. One of our spring break activities with my children, with my wife and children, we're going to have 4 tech-free days. We're going to leave the house. We're going to go on a little short, it's not really a staycation. We're going somewhere kind of local-ish, but we're getting away. And we're no devices. We're bringing board games. We need that reset about once every 6 to 8 months. We need a 3 to 4 day window with no technology at all. We're going to spend time without digital stimulation. We need to facilitate more books. As long as my kids are actively reading novels, I will continue to buy things like video games for them. That their currency is to continue reading. We'll talk about that too here in a minute. We want to facilitate more new experiences. My 13-year-old is running track. I don't think he's ever even seen track. The track coach asked me this morning if he was comfortable running hurdles. He's never seen a hurdle in his life. He's a real big kid, so I'm a little worried about how he's going to do with hurdles. But I say big, he's like tall and lanky. He's not a hurdle kid, but for some reason she wants him running hurdles. But we're going to try it. We're going to facilitate new experiences. We want to give our kids more responsibilities. We want to give our kids non-digital time with friends. On Sunday afternoon, it was a beautiful day, and we knew the rain was coming. So on Sunday afternoon, our kids are still young enough to where we facilitate a lot of those conversations. On Sunday afternoon, my wife texted a group of moms and said, hey, you guys want to do a gel gun battle in the woods? And so we brought gel guns, the little gel shooter guns, and there was a group of like 10 kids who all went in these wooded area, and they all shot gel guns at each other for a couple hours. So that kind of non-digital time we need to be able to create. We also need to facilitate more sleep. Guys, I know it's not going to be popular, but man, if you can get your 13-year-old kids in bed, probably earlier than they're getting in bed. I don't know. For me, like 8:30 would be great. Some of you just laughed. You're on mute, but I know you just laughed at what I just said. I mean it. It helps. All right, but here's the big one. The big one is I want you to facilitate more dialogue. Okay, dialogue is absolutely everything. So here's where I'm going to help you. Okay, here's the hands-on practical stuff that I can offer. Number one, this slide, screenshot it if you want, but it's on the presentation materials list that I gave you, or that you can link to. If you got on this presentation late, in the chat is a link to all of the slides. You can download them all. So here are some conversations for you to have with your kids at every age. One, tell them that they're communicating with people, not with phones, and kind of help talk through what that looks like. You need to walk through these conversations with them. The one that I bolded is actually really important because it's the one that I don't read these to you because I assume you can read them to yourself. But I want to read the one that's bolded, and I don't want to skip it. I need your kid to know what they're supposed to do if they see something concerning. So if my kid is ever playing a video game and someone attempts to message them that they don't know. If that happens, I need them to know how they are supposed to. I need to know how they're supposed to respond to that. Okay. Hang on just a second. In the chat, somebody's asking for. Boom. There we go. All right. There's the link again. All right. I need my kid to know if they see somebody attempting to chat with them, what are they supposed to do? If they see an image with nudity, what are they supposed to do? So here's the answer for my kids. For my kids, the answer is don't touch it, don't swipe it off, don't close it, just bring it to me, and then we'll talk. Let me tell you why that's an important thing for you to tell your kids. Your kids have heard never talk to anybody online. They've gotten that from school. They've probably gotten that from you. They've heard don't talk to strangers. They've heard that, for the record, somebody just put in the chat, I need the PDF. If you'll go to the link I just put in the chat, the PDF can be downloaded from that link. Okay, so the reason I want to tell my kids not to touch the stuff they see, but just to bring it to me, because they've heard not to do these things, when they see them, they're prone to wanting to hide it from you. So someone could attempt to reach out to your kids and say, hey, my name is whatever. Do you want to be friends? Do you want to talk? Somebody could approach your kid that way on a digital platform. And because your kid intrinsically knows, because they've heard this message most of their life, because they know they're not supposed to engage in that, they're going to be tempted to just close it and pretend it never happened. I don't want that. I want them to bring it to me so we can talk about it. All right, so that's an important thing for you to do with your kids. Couple other things. Oh, hang on. I need to click back on here. Here we go. Some other questions. I'm not going to read these to you because there's some things I need to get to. But you can walk through all of these statements or all of these conversations with your kids. Man, I think it would be great. Down at the bottom, the last one says companies all sell something. What do social media companies sell? Ask your kids that question. Talk to them about what the primary goal of a social media company is. And here's why. Most kids believe that the goal of a social media company is to connect people. That's not true. Connecting people is the way they actually sell their product. And what their product is your attention. The goal, they're trying to sell your attention to advertisers. Now, there's a whole bunch of ways that we could be doing this differently. In fact, if we switched off of an ad model and went to a subscription model for social media, it would be revolutionary. And the company that does that first will be the healthiest social media company on the planet. The problem is I don't know that they would be able to support their business model that way. We expect these things to be free now. The problem is we don't recognize that our attention is the currency. All right, so let your kids understand that. All right, now here's how I'm going to help you structure your family a little bit differently, okay? A bunch of parents ask me all the time, so how much screen time should I give my kids? Or when should I set the timer? Okay, should they get 1 hour? Should they get 3 hours? Complicated answers, but let me try to answer them the best I can. One, there is no blanket answer to that question. I'm not going to tell you an hour a day or 2 hours a day. I wish I could. If I could, it would make my life a lot easier, but I've done this long enough to know that that's not really possible. So let me explain to you how you decide on screen time. Number one, we want to decide who we are as a family. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to measure our life in weeks, not in days. Here's what I'm going to ask you to do, parents. I want you to have a conversation with your family starting tonight. The conversation is, what do we consider a good, full week? What sorts of things do we want to be sure that we've done? If I had to look at the last 7 days, from Sunday to Sunday, if I had to look at that week and say it was a good week, it was a full week, what kinds of things would be on that list? All right, so here's some ideas that I had. Now, yours might be a little bit different. Here's some ideas that I had. A good week for us is we've chosen to eat healthy more times than not. I'm not a swear off of sugar kind of guy, because I feel like that's destined to fail. I'm more of a moderation kind of guy. So for us, we eat out, but we also try to eat healthy more times than not. Next, we want to play outside for more than an hour, and we'd like to do that maybe more than twice a week. So at least 3 times a week, I would like for my kids to be outside for more than an hour. I would like for them to have at least once, maybe twice, to gotten dirty enough to need a shower from being outside. That means they've gotten in the mud, or they've just done something that kind of made them sweaty and gross and they needed to come in and shower. Or if that's not really your family's thing, they've played themselves exhausted. Every parent knows what that phrase means. They've played themselves exhausted. That kind of exhausted where you think, okay, they're about to crash. Do that at least once a week. It's been a pretty good week. They've also played something non-digital that requires imagination. So at least once or twice you've seen them, I don't know, practice a magic trick or build a Lego set or do something with their hands or play a board game. All right, so at least once a week we're kind of seeing that. Now, for the record, some of this stuff can go together. We've read at least 3 times during the week. I think that's a good week. At least 3 times my kid has read for maybe 10, 15 minutes. I'm not talking about a marathon where they've finished, War and Peace. Just something where I feel like they've gotten some reading time in. Next, maybe we've done a shared activity. So once or twice, I don't know, we watched a movie. We watched a show. That's fine. I know it's digital, but it's a shared experience as opposed to an individual experience. So I'm good with that. Together games, a board game, a card game, a conversation. The one thing I would encourage, if you're going to do this, meals don't count for that. I would like for meals to be their own conversation, but meals don't count as together time. I want you to do something that's a little more intentional. All right. So then when it comes time to make decisions about your screen time, you ask the question, has it been a good week? All right, now let me tell you why that's going to free you up. Parents, if your kids have had a week that looks a little bit like that, don't sweat their screen time. They can probably be on their iPad longer than the average kid. They can probably play video games a couple hours. Maybe on Saturday, if you want to give them extra time on Minecraft because you look through the week and it's looked like this, I got no problem with that. The goal is not to militantly guard our kids' digital screen time. That was our instinctive reaction. Once we started to figure out, like, oh, this is not good, we can damage kids' brains with digital stimulation. Once we started to figure that out, the question became, okay, how can we like do as much of it as possible without damaging them? That's the wrong mentality. The right mentality is give them a healthy life and then let technology kind of fall into it where it falls into it. There's a rule in my house. When we give our kids choice time, which happens a lot during the week, which is, okay, I got nothing going on. You did your homework, whatever. Okay, you got choice time. When we give them choice time, here's a rule. If the first thing they pick is digital more than 3 times or more than twice in a row, so if you get to 3 times in a row, that tells me they're getting too much screen time. I'm gonna frame that a little differently because it may have sounded confusing. If on Monday I say it's choice time, what do you guys want to do? And my kids run to the Xbox, no problem. I'm going to let them have some Xbox time. On Tuesday, if it's choice time again and they go to the Xbox, all right, that's twice. We get to Wednesday and it's choice time and I say, guys, do what you want to do. And they go to the Xbox again. That tells me, okay, they're getting way too much Xbox time. And for the rest of the week, but for me, probably for a couple of weeks, no Xbox. You guys need to go do other things. What they have learned in years of that message, what they've learned is that I'm less worried about how much time they're spending on their devices than I am about how much time they're spending in the real world. I would rather emphasize increasing their time in the real world rather than emphasize decreasing their screen time. Now, I want to do both, but I'd rather do that. All right. So with these last 8 minutes, I want to show you what we developed. I say what we developed. I developed this during my dissertation. It's called the Well-Connected Family Blueprint. It's changed names a bit over the years. On that same webpage that I sent you to, there is a PDF of this document. There's actually 2 different versions of it. If you go up to the top, it says Well-Connected Family Blueprint, and it has 2 different versions. The first version is blank. The second version is full of examples. Okay, so I'm not going to walk through those examples. The next 20 slides are basically me walking through examples because I've done presentations where we only focused on the family blueprint. But I wanted to give you some examples. Here's what the family blueprint is. The family blueprint is a series of expectations and conversations for you to have with your kids. What is an appropriate use of social media in our home? What is an appropriate use of video gaming in our home? What is an appropriate use of text messaging and basic messaging applications in our home? Those are the types of questions that the Well-Connected Family Blueprint is meant to address. It is not meant to be a rigid document. It is meant to help guide your family in having a dialogue around these really tricky subjects that gives you a little bit of breathing room. It means you don't have to just set a clock. I'm going to hurt some parents' feelings right now. Some of you have decided that the way you're going to resolve technology is you're going to give your kid 1 hour per day between 5 and 6 o'clock. That's your hour. That's well intended, and it's not a bad idea, but you know what it ends up doing? It ends up creating a hyper addictive and hyper possessive feeling. I'm going to be in front of my Xbox between 5 and 6. And there's like anxious energy that comes around the minutes leading up to it. And there's this anxious energy around the end. We want to get free of that. That model of technology intervention in your kid's life, all you're doing is you're conditioning your kid to obey you during a window of their lives where they have to, which is great. I'm not knocking that. But parents who are doing that, when your kid's 20, you're not going to be there to put the brakes on, and they're going to go nuts. I would much rather you spend their young life encouraging them to live in the real world as much as possible. Because what they're going to find is when they get to the age where they can start themselves increasing their digital time, my hope is they begin to recognize that digital or that analog world that they grew up in was valuable, and it's something that they miss. All right. I did want to get to, so I'm gonna move really quickly. If you're following, these are all the examples. So ignore these. Well, they're on the website. These are all examples. The one thing I wanted to go through was how do we differentiate between concerning video gaming tech and not concerning video game tech? Because there is a really important difference. My kids on things like any freemium gaming. Remember like Fruit Ninja? That's the one I tell adults because you guys probably remember that game. My kid, 10 minutes tops. You played that game for more than 10 minutes, I'm done. So I'm taking the device after about 10 minutes. Don't tell my kids this. They don't have a time limit on Minecraft, ever. When they're playing Minecraft, I let them go. And the reason I let them go is because those two apps, those two devices, or those two activities are completely different. So I want to help you differentiate between those two, and then I'm going to close down. All right, so here's some concerning things. If you see the things on the left, random interval rewards, what does that mean? It means they're kind of constantly seeking things and opening boxes and getting small little rewards, and then a medium reward, and then small rewards, and then a big reward. That's creating a dopamine loop in their brains, and that's not healthy. If you're seeing rapid screen changes and pacing, so like it's super fast, flashing lights, if they have the ability to jump to other options. So in other words, if they're on a tablet or on a phone, if they don't like what they're playing, they'll just move to the next app. The ability to do that quickly creates a dopamine loop. If they have uncontrolled access to other users, if they have a heavy emphasis on user interaction. So in other words, if it's vital for them to engage with other people to play the game, that's concerning to me. And if every parent can relate to this. Have you ever given your kid a tablet, and then when you take it back, it's not your kid anymore? It's this demon baby who you don't recognize. It's this kid who like has horns and is snarling at you. Okay, that's a problem. That means what they were doing was not okay. It means they were in a high dopamine feedback activity. Parents, that wasn't because they're tired. It wasn't because the tablet made them tired. It's because they were engaging in a highly dopaminergic activity, and you, like any addict, you took the addictive thing away, and they don't know how to handle it. So if you see mood changes post-use, I don't care what it is, parents, that is a problem, and you need to be able to step in and regulate that. So what's not concerning to me? Well, what's not concerning to me is really the opposite. What's not concerning to me is controlled pacing. It's not moving super fast. Minecraft is kind of like that. It doesn't move super fast. Now they can build quickly, but it doesn't, the game itself doesn't move really quickly. There's a limited ability to jump to other options. So for example, console gaming doesn't stress me out as much because generally switching between games requires a few more seconds. They've got to close one game, open another. There's usually a little bit of load time. So that kind of console gaming is less concerning. If there's controlled access or no access to other users, I feel way better about that. And that gives me an opportunity to tell you a whole bunch of parents listen to me talk about technology, and their instinct is to want to attack the school district because the school district has given their kids a bunch of digital assignments. I need you to hear ed tech is designed to not involve a lot of the concerning stuff on the left. Now, some of it does, and I don't love it. But we're in an era now where most school districts recognize that they need to reduce the concerning, highly dopaminergic stuff that you see on the left. Okay, so ed tech is a completely different category. If you've got optional user interaction, so like open world gaming, my kids also don't really have a time limit on the Zelda games on the Switch. And if there's a stable mood. All right, so that's the differentiation between concerning and not concerning. All right. There's a slide on here. I don't have time to go through it, but it's really easy to understand. You don't need me for it. If you'll download it, you can see it. How do we hit the reset button? If technology has overtaken your family and you hear all this and you think, I don't know what to do, you know what? I do have time. So here's how we're going to end it. If your family is lost, if you feel like we're so deep in technology, I don't know how to get out of it. I'd set a target date about 6 weeks from now. Plan that you're going to unplug for 3 to 5 days. And between now and then, set incremental goals as to how to get there. So some examples on the screen in front of you. And then gradually, over those 6 weeks, gradually remove certain things, replace it with healthier things. Do that for about 6 weeks. And then get to your digital vacation and you go Old Testament, man. Go like tech free. Go as with as little technology as possible. Make a game out of it. You know, I mean it. Go candlelight. That'd be fun. Well, that may be a little bit excessive. You get the idea. Reduce the technology in your home. All right, and then you come back with a new plan, and the new plan is rooted in environment. It's rooted in different things, and it's actually built around the plan that you can download from our website. All right. So here's my closing slide. My closing slide. The QR code on the right will take you to the presentation page. The presentation page has all the slides from today. It has the handout from today. The QR code on the left is, look, they bring me in for a reason. I have to make a living too. The one on the left is how to book appointment with an appointment with either me or one of my staff. I will tell you, I hired good people. The people that you will connect with through our staff. If you have a clinical need, we are a virtual practice right now. We do offer some in-person stuff, but on our website, you can book virtual appointments. Now, I realize it's hard not to choke on the irony of my specialty being digital stimulation, and yet I offer a primarily virtual practice. Trust me, it works better than you think it will. But if you would like to schedule an appointment with myself or one of my staff people, it's on the left. I promise you, I hired good people who will be really beneficial. They've got a wide variety of specialties. But if you need to reach us, that's where to reach us. I'm done. In case you didn't notice, our hosts both lost power about midway through this presentation. And so, so it was just us. So let me see. Can you send the link to the PowerPoint presentation? Okay, we get a bunch of those. I'm on my phone watching and can't see any of the message in the chat for some reason. Is it possible to send the resources via email? Yeah, I'll ask Ashley to do that. Is this offered for parents? Okay. So presentation mentioned I was at Green. Is this offered to other schools? Yes. So I'll go wherever they need me, and I'll go which any PTA that wants to bring me in can bring me in. What you would need to do is go to your administration, tell them that a guy, you heard me speak, tell them that you heard it for the Allen presentation, and you can tell them we've worked with Green. Your district and I are very well acquainted. I'm already on your approved vendors list. So yes, if your school would like something more specific, more specific in order to have this like a more of a personal dialogue with your campus, I would absolutely be happy to help with that. All right. The QR codes hopefully give you what you need. Guys, I love you. I would love to hang out. I've actually got an appointment I've got to get to. All right. A family in need of some technological help has an appointment with me. It started at 1. They're usually gracious. They knew I was doing this ahead of time. But we're back at 5:30 tonight. We're going to do this exact same presentation. I'll probably have a little more time for Q&A. If you would like to talk tonight, if you have some specific questions, meet us back at 5:30. Maybe jump on towards the tail end because you heard most of the conversation. Throw your questions in the chat. I will commit to this evening giving you a little more Q&A time than I am today. But you guys are awesome. You know where to find me if you need me. Thanks for hanging out with me. I'm going to keep posting the link so you've got it. If you're on a mobile device, by the way, and you can't see, oh, there's Ashley. Ashley says connect to her and she'll help book with schools. So yes, do that. What was I saying? Oh, if you're on a mobile device and you can't see, it's requested captions being able to. Okay. If you are on a mobile device and you can't see the chat for any reason, the company that you need to look for is Paravita, Paravita, Paravita Therapy and Training. The website is actually www.paravitatct, training, consulting, and therapy. We have some weird consulting things that we do, so we kind of had to have an all-encompassing website. Paravitatct.com. Paravita means two things. One, it means, if you break down the Latin and Greek prefixes, it means to walk alongside people in life. Second, it also is the name of the city my kids lived in the book that I wrote for them when they were really, really little. So that's where that name came from. So paravitatct.com, and you can reach us that way. All right, guys, I'm going to jump off, but you're amazing. I'll see you soon.